Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a first look at a brand new Pokemon in the world of Pokemon Go, KLAWF. KLAWF arrives as a part of the Pinch Perfect event in Pokemon Go, and unfortunately it cannot be encountered in the wild. You can only get it through doing research tasks. KLAWF is a pure rock type Pokemon, and for the moveset, it's Mud Slap as the fast move, and then your choice of Rock Tomb, Rock Slide, or Bulldoze as the charge moves. Right off the bat, KLAWF has a pretty solid move pool, but the mono rock typing is a pretty big cause for concern. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1, we're off to a nightmare start leading Altaria into Shadow, Galarian Weezing. So I'm going to save switch into KLAWF, opponent stays in the matchup, and look at the Mud Slaps go. They only threw 6 Fairy Winds. This cannot be a play rough, so I no-shield a Brutal Swing, and then they switch out and send out Gourgeist. This is a massive bait out. I have Shadow Scizor in the back. Scizor would get deleted by Incinerates, so I fire off the Rock Tomb, applying a debuff and getting some very nice damage. And now I can go for an aggressive farm down with Altaria. The Shadow Ball is not going to hit nearly as hard as it typically would due to the debuff. I can get a huge farm down, and with the Mud Slap damage already on the Weezing, Weezing is in Sky Attack range. My opponent switches out. They know they're in trouble. They pivot back into the Weezing, and Weezing's immediately under pressure from the Sky Attack. Sky Attack forces the shield. In comes Shadow Scizor. Scizor is going to look for a 1-shield farm down. The Gourgeist is low enough that I should be able to farm them down with 2 Bullet Punches, meaning that the Incinerate damage will not even register. My opponent actually just resigns the match, so it appears they did not have an answer to an up energy Scizor in the back. Hopping into the next match, we've got a perfect mirror lead, Altaria versus Altaria. I'm going to look to overfarm, and I actually end up CMP tying with my opponent. I do have a pretty high rank Altaria, so I typically will lose most CMP ties. Ideally, I want to pivot out of this matchup, but unfortunately, even though KLAWF is a rock type, I'm on Mud Slap, so I wouldn't have any fast move pressure, so I'm forced to pivot out into the Shadow Scizor instead. Scizor is going to look for the 1-shield farm down, but my opponent is going to pivot out, and they send in Shadow Empoleon. I disagree with the choice of Empoleon being Shadow. I think the regular Empoleon is just strictly better, because the Shadow Empoleon actually loses to Shadow Scizor. Here, I do get a bit of good luck going my way as I do get the Night Slash boost, but my opponent's CMP tied, so I'm not really going to get any value out of this Night Slash boost as I end up no-shielding and getting KO'd as my opponent Drill Pecks to cover for a catch. Now I can send in KLAWF and look for a 1-shield farm down. I'm going to get so much energy from this Empoleon. Empoleon opts out, pivoting into the Scizor. I bank the Rock Tomb for later, snipe them down with the Altaria, and I have a charge attack loaded for whatever they have in the back on KLAWF. My opponent waits down the timer. In comes Shadow Scizor. I intentionally wait for the 3rd Bullet Punch to land as I fire off the Flamethrower. That is important because that's only going to give them 3 Metal Sounds instead of 4, meaning they are 1 shy of the game-winning Hydro Cannon. Back in comes KLAWF. They don't have the move, but I have the Rock Tomb loaded. Rock Tomb KOs Empoleon, and that's a good game. Nightmare lead in the next match, Altaria into Shadow Celio. This team is very weak to Celio. I save switch into KLAWF, and my opponent sends out Stunfisk. So we have successfully baited out the Stunfisk, and now KLAWF will attempt to flip this matchup. A scenario like this is where Bulldoze would be really nice. I honestly really didn't click Rock Slide all that much, so I think if I ran it again, I would probably use Bulldoze. Because Bulldoze, at the very least, I get super effective damage here. I could debuff them, ramp up my Mud Slap damage. Whereas here, unfortunately, look at this. I just missed the knockout. I don't quite have enough damage, and I'm forced to fire off energy. Rock Slide will take the KO. My opponent sends in Primeape, and this could get very tricky. I send in Altaria. In comes Celio, answered with the Shadow Scizor. And man, this is going to be such a tough game to win. Normally, Shadow Scizor has a great matchup into Celio, but the Celio is up energy, they're up a shield, well, they're up 2 shields now, so they're going to get to land a Surf, and my Scizor is not surviving. I Night Slash bait and make a second Night Slash on the CMP tie to their second Surf. This is very helpful as I'm able to pull the final shield, and now it's all up to Altaria. I think with that CMP tie, there's actually a chance that I can win this game. I send in the Altaria, Powder Snows are shredding me, but if I can make it to a Sky Attack before they can make a Rage Fist on their Primeape, I should be okay. In comes Primeape, and I'm outpaced by a singular turn, and that is going to lose me this game. I just didn't have enough energy. I will get to take the knockout, but with the Rage Fist, the damage is done. Altaria is too low. Celio Powder Snows down, and we will lose that game. We get the Dream lead in the next match, Altaria into Gastrodon. My opponent safe switches into Fearow, and I will respond with Shadow Scizor. Fearow did overfarm before firing off the Drill Peck, so I will have to keep that in mind as I look to overfarm myself. I'm going to farm up 4, fire off the Night Slash on the CMP tie, This way, my opponent will have to give me one of their shields if they want to force my final shield. I'm pretty okay with that. Being down 1 shield is fine. It's usually when you're down 2 shields that things can get a little scary. I exit with a Trailblaze as well, so if they bring back in the Gastrodon, which they do, Gastrodon's getting one shot because there's no way they're going to shield it knowing it's going to be aligned to Altaria. I immediately pivot into KLAWF. In the back is Toucannon, and this could get scary. Even though Toucannon, its moveset is resisted by KLAWF, KLAWF is not the bulkiest mon ever. Big Blast connects, KLAWF gets rocked, but KLAWF hangs on. KLAWF fires off the Rock Tomb. They're now going to be debuffed. That means I don't think they can actually go for a peck down. They cannot. KLAWF would have survived. That forces their energy, and I'll be able to take the win with Altaria. Toucannon wins just by completely overwhelming teams with offensive pressure, so the fact that they're at -1 means I no longer have anything to fear. Beak Blast lands, but a -1 Beak Blast is not particularly scary to Altaria. Altaria survives, lands the Sky Attack, snipes with a Bullet Punch from Scizor, and secures the win. We see a pretty scary lead in the next match, Altaria into Shadow Scizor. Technically, this team is pretty weak to Scizor. I have my own Scizor, I have KLAWF, which takes super effective damage from Bullet Punch. Scizor lead, definitely not a fun time. The good news is my opponent cannot knock me out with a Night Slash here. They're going to have to throw twice if they want the KO. Night Slash is going to land, they pivot out into Furret, and I'm going to stay in to fire off the Sky Attack before I send in my Shadow Scizor. Shadow Scizor is going to be a wall to the charge attacks from Furret, but unfortunately the Furret is healthy enough that it should barely be able to hang on and make it to a second Swift. The Swift won't do a lot, but they'll just barely hang on, and I decide to go down a shield. This is because I want to exit with energy to go for a CMP tie against my opponent's Scizor. I know they have a ton of energy as well, but I do have a low attack Shadow Scizor, so I lose charge attack priority, and that forces my hand. I'm forced to go down a shield. I can't lose this energy. I fire off the Night Slash. I'm pivoting into KLAWF, and in the back, oh, that's a really cool pick. There's a Shadow Giratina. Shadow Giratina will outpace, making the Dragon Claw before I'm able to get the Rock Tomb. Dragon Claw lands, KLAWF gets rocked, KLAWF barely hangs on as it returns fire with the Rock Tomb. My opponent no shields, recognizing that that's going to do less damage than a Night Slash. In comes Scizor looking for the farm down, but I can't get there. They make it to a charge stack, Ancient Power KOs, and it's going to be a race. Dragon Breath versus Dragon Breath. Altaria on 1 HP gets the farm down and secures the win. Hopping into the next match, leading Altaria into Galarian Corsola. This is a pretty okay matchup on the lead for Altaria, as Altaria is able to put in some very nice work, and Power Gem will not take the knockout. So I'm pretty comfortable no shielding. I will get to their Sky Attack and get them very low, and that can set a farm down for Shadow Scizor. But my opponent gets aggressive. They're pivoting out, they're sending in Licky Licky. I need to soften up the Licky Licky because I'm pretty weak to it on this team, and then send in Shadow Scizor. This is a pretty safe bait for my opponent, but I cannot let a Shadow Ball land, so I'm forced to put up the shield. They go for the Body Slam, I'm going to go for a Night Slash and an Undercharge, and then fully farm them down. If they try and go for the Shadow Ball, they're not going to get there, so my opponent makes the correct play, which is instead just firing off the Body Slam for a little bit of chip. My opponent denies the farm down, back in comes Corsola. Corsola looking for a farm down, but before they get there, I'm able to make one final Night Slash. Night Slash will be shielded. Can we force a Simul KO? No, we cannot, and they're healthy enough that I can't even get the snipe with one Dragon Breath. So Altaria will get knocked out, but by my count, they should be one off the back-to-back. So I get the farm down with KLAWF. What do they have? It is Shadow Drapeon, and this might actually be a win. Drapeon has a ton of energy. It's all going to come down to, can I get a Mud Slap down with KLAWF? Endgames like these are where Bulldoze over Rock Slide would be very nice. The Rock Tomb debuff, of course, makes it so I survive the Aqua Tail better, but getting to ramp up my Mud Slap damage with the Bulldozes would be very, very helpful. I shield up the Aqua Tail, it all comes down to this. They do not have the back-to-back, and that will win me the game. KLAWF doesn't even have to throw the Rock Tomb, gets the farm down, and takes the win. Great lead in the next match, leading Altaria into Araquanid, but the moment my opponent safe switches Corsola, I make a pretty massive error. I should have sent in the Shadow Scizor instantly, but instead I stay in with the Altaria, hoping my opponent would throw early so that I could no shield and bring in the Scizor, but unfortunately for me, my opponent has other plans. They hold their energy, they farm up a ton, and that's going to make life very, very tricky. I send in Shadow Scizor, but unfortunately I'm not going to get the farm down that I was hoping for. The switch timer is up. They can send in Araquanid, and Araquanid is going to do a very good job at shutting down the energy from Shadow Scizor. I boost myself up with a Trailblaze, trying to make it to the Night Slash, but I will get outpaced by a turn. Bubble Beam will not take the knockout, however, I can hold on. I do make a last-second Trailblaze, and I think I may have just gotten the damage registration error. So that is a game inconsistency going in my favor. I send in Altaria looking for the farm down, but I don't get the farm down as my opponent now gets the damage registration error. So there's damage registration error left, right, and center. So we're about even in this game. In the back is Steelix. And this is another spot where having Bulldoze would be nice, but even if we had Bulldoze, I still think we lose the game because KLAWF is just not tanky enough to survive the fast move pressure. I shield the first Psychic Fangs, but whether I shield the first or second won't matter here because the Rock can debuff. Either way, it's just going to come down to the survivability of KLAWF. This will be Psychic Fangs coming out from the Steelix. Psychic Fangs lands, Steelix farms down KLAWF, and unfortunately, we get 3 ball flags. We've got some crazy spice for my next opponent as I lead Altaria into Hydreigon. Hydreigon is very, very spammy. I put up the shield, they full send a fly, that's a big swing of momentum. I overfarm quite a bit, and they make a frame-perfect catch as they catch the Sky Attack onto Blastoise. Blastoise, a bit of a risky save swap in a Jellicent meta, but I don't have a Jellicent, so I'm actually very, very weak to it. Sky Attack into the Blastoise will be shielded, Blastoise farming up, very nice overfarm from my opponent. I'm just going to let the Altaria go. They go for the Hydro Cannon, and look at the 0, 11, 15 Altaria, the 1 HP survive. We make the Sky Attack, knocking out the Blastoise, and that is very good. In the back, they have Tentacruel, and I can send in KLAWF. I should survive a Scald from full HP. This is a Poison Sting Tentacruel. Very nice charge stack timing there from my opponent. Scald will not knock out. They end up going for a payback. To be fair, KLAWF is a new Pokemon. People may not be familiar with what KLAWF is or what it has. I fire off the Rock Slide. I think this is the first Rock Slide that I've thrown this entire video. Now I send in Scizor as they make it to the Brutal Swing. Scizor will take massive damage from the Brutal Swing. Hydreigon's damage output is crazy. Back in comes Tentacruel, but unfortunately Tentacruel, it just doesn't have any fast move pressure here. I'm able to get the Night Slash, knock out the Tentacruel, and take home the win. We've got a pretty decent lead in the next match. Altaria into Shadow Drapeon. Shadow Drapeon will have the pacing advantage, but they don't really have any fast move pressure, whereas the Dragon Breaths will add up over time. Crunch lands onto Altaria. Altaria returning fire with the Sky Attack. I am expecting a shield here, so when my opponent no shields, that honestly works out nicely for me. Here I go for an aggressive play, getting a catch and sneak onto KLAWF. KLAWF gets absolutely deleted by the Crunch, and in comes a Latios. Very cool spice. Latios banks a ton of energy, switches out, catches onto Corsola, and man, this scenario is just going from bad to worse, as I just really don't see a way to win this game now. The Corsola is debuffed, but they're still going to do way too much damage to Shadow Scizor. They have a ton of energy on the Latios as well, so at this point, I think unfortunately, there's just no combination of plays that wins me this game. KLAWF taking so much damage from the Crunch, unfortunately kind of doomed us here. I send in Altaria hoping for a catch, but I do not get it. And now Latios should be able to commit to a farm down and then just double Aura Sphere the Shadow Scizor. I'm going to stay on the field with Altaria hoping I can get the Sky Attack, but it's just never going to happen. I no-shield the Scizor, they're at the back-to-back. Aura Sphere KOs the Scizor, and unfortunately we will lose that game. Hopping into the final match, and oh my goodness, look at the spice. Altaria leading into a Great League Raikou. This is a very rare Pokemon, and a pretty spicy Pokemon at that. Honestly, I feel like my opponents definitely turned up the heat when it came to the spice picks in these battles. They end up pivoting out after landing the Wild Charge, and Furret will get hit with the Sky Attack. I stay in to force my opponent's hand to throw some energy. Wow, that was a perfect overfarm by my opponent. Right before I get the Sky Attack, they fire off the Swift and take the KO. But this was all by design. I want to set up my Shadow Scizor. Scizor is a wall to energy from Furret. I get a big farm down and exit loaded on energy. If they bring the Raikou, I'm pivoting and sending in KLAWF to try and land some Mud Slaps. In comes KLAWF. In the back is Shadow Toucannon, and this on paper should be the kind of endgame that KLAWF is very good at, because KLAWF is going to be a complete wall to the flying moves from Toucannon. But as you can see, these pecs already have gotten through a quarter of my health bar. So even though KLAWF is a wall to the energy from Toucannon, it definitely doesn't feel like it. Toucannon did bait the first time, they do not bait the second time, and I'm going to throw the Rock Slide as it is slightly cheaper. Rock Slide is going to be forcing the final shield, and then I can look for a combo play with the Shadow Scizor, but they read me like a book and send in Raikou. Raikou takes critical damage from the Night Slash, they get farmed down. Can I survive the peck? Yes, I can, and Shadow Scizor is able to clutch this win. Night Slash KO's Shadow Toucannon, and we escape with a win against, wow, an incredibly spicy team. And now some final thoughts on KLAWF and its place in the Open Great League. I think that they did a pretty decent job when it comes to KLAWF's moveset. Mudslap plus Rock Tomb is a combination that we've seen have success before. I think the biggest issue with KLAWF is unfortunately something that can't be changed, and that's its mono rock typing. We really don't see a lot of rock types have success that are mono rock types. They always have to have some kind of secondary typing to help add some resistances or just have some pretty insane stats. So even though KLAWF stats aren't awful, like granted, I do have a research one because that's the only way to get it, but KLAWF is like mid 1800s, which I would say is about average bulk. Granted, mine will be glassier because of the aforementioned research task and the IVs being capped at 10, 10, 10 as the lowest that they can go. But overall, its average bulk and its move pool is pretty solid. I think, unfortunately, the biggest thing that holds it back is that mono rock typing. It's the thing that you can't change, and that is quite unfortunate. For KLAWF to see real meaningful success in the future, it would need a pretty overpoweringly good move pool to overcome the sins of its typing. So for now, it's a Pokemon that you can go do research tasks for. I believe the research task is win a raid, and it gives you either a Great League Delmise, which is pretty nice because I believe from raids, it's too high of combat power to be Great League, or a Great League eligible KLAWF. So I believe it's the win a raid task. I ended up stacking 3 of those tasks this morning. Got 2 KLAWFs and a Delmise, so I finally have a Great League Delmise, which is very nice. Ended up being a pretty decent IV for the Great League as well. I know it's not the greatest Pokemon, but I always like having at least one of every Pokemon. And then from there, I ended up building the best of the 2 KLAWFs, which 1480 combat power isn't the greatest, but at least the stats were better than the other one, because I believe the other one was like a 14, 11, 12 that was also 1480. So for now, it's basically just a Dex entry. Maybe there's a limited meta in the future where it could do well, but realistically, for the time being, I think both Mudslap and Rock Tomb are moves that we could potentially see tuned down in the future. So for a Pokemon that already doesn't have a lot of relevance, needing to rely on moves that I imagine probably have some kind of expiration date in terms of getting tuned down, because eventually they're going to have to address the large power creep in the meta. I don't see KLAWF having success anytime soon, but I feel like they did a solid attempt to try and make KLAWF decent, but unfortunately, being mono rock is just really, really rough to overcome. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. Thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.